Hello and welcome back to the show. So I have a very inspirational and special guest today, Nick Prefontaine. So if you guys don't know who Nick is, his story actually started all the way back when he was only 14 years old, when his parents were told that he might never walk, talk, or eat on his own again. But in less than 90 days, he was actually able to run out of the hospital, not just walk out of the hospital. And that was a goal that he set for himself. And today, Nick is recognized as a motivational speaker, inspiring others. He is the founder of the STEP system, as well as Common Goal, which is helping other people overcome their barriers, overcome their challenges, and be able to be successful in their day-to-day life as well. So, Nick, welcome to the show. I'm super excited to have you here.
So excited for this conversation. Even more so now that I have a little bit better lay of the land and we chatted a little bit before. So happy to jump in.
Absolutely, man. So, before we get started in talking about, some of the things that you're doing right now and how you're helping others, I would love for you to just dig right into your story from the time that this all started, right? Back when you were 14, and really kind of walk us through what that journey was like and how that led you to where you are here today, where you're helping, multiple people around the world.
Oh yeah, gosh. Okay. My story, yeah, it definitely goes back to that day when I was only in eighth grade. I was 14 years old. I was in eighth grade with the rest of my classmates. And I don't know about you, but whenever we got released a little bit early, didn't even matter how long, but a little bit early from school, when I was that age, it was always a huge deal. So we all got released a little bit early, maybe like a semester early. We didn't even, I mean, a class, like one class early. So we all brought our gear, our snowboard gear, onto the bus to get ready, so as not to miss a precious moment once we got to the mountain. And we got to the mountain, my buddies and I, and we headed right for the chairlift where the rest of the class went inside to get ready, but not us. We were ready to go. So on the chairlift ride up, we noticed that, Kobe, that it was very icy. I mean, people were wiping out everywhere, and because it had been raining earlier in the day, and the chairlift where it went over was right over the terrain park where all of the jumps were, like the jumps and the rails and that kind of thing. So I knew as soon as I saw it that I had to go off the biggest jump in the terrain park. So got to the top, buckled into my snowboard, took a breath of that crisp winter air, and confidently charged towards that jump with all my speed. And going into the jump, I caught the edge of my snowboard, and that's the last thing that I remember. So they wanted to bring a helicopter to the mountain to rush me to the hospital, and they couldn't because it was too windy. So they sent in an ambulance, and out of all the paramedics, out of the six paramedics, there was only one who could intubate on the spot, and I needed that to be able to breathe. Lucky for me, he was one of the paramedics that showed up to the mountain that day. And retelling this story is always easy for me just because there are three things that I credit for being able to be here today with you and your listeners. And the first one I already shared, the right paramedic showed up at the mountain. He was actually, when he got the call, he was off duty in the parking lot already at the mountain. The second thing, although I wasn't wearing a helmet, the pair of goggles that I had on were very thick with a lot of padding. So I learned from doctors, eyewitness account experts, that not only did my goggles brace my impact, but as I continued to roll down the mountain and continued to hit my head, my goggles moved to cushion each blow between my head and the ice. The third thing, the most important thing, I think, is that once I got to the hospital, I was out. I was resting in a coma in the intensive care unit, unable to communicate with anyone. And each time the doctors would come into my room to share progress updates with my parents would usher them out of the room because the doctors figured, oh, he's in a coma. He can't hear us, what we're saying. So they went to share the not so good news, not so good news, not so good news right in front of me. And my parents stopped them. Actually, it was my mom. She stopped them and she said, no, not in front of him. So she made them step outside the room. And then once they were there, that's where they shared that I probably wouldn't be able to walk, talk, or eat on my own ever again. And even if I was able to come out of the coma, there was a good chance that I would need 24-hour care for the rest of my life. So my parents, Kobe, didn't accept this like so many patients do as a death sentence. They took the information, thanked the doctors, and allowed me to treat it like any other situation. I didn't know any of this. Like, this was all outside noise. I didn't know any of this. So I treated it like any other situation. I ended up being in the coma for 3 weeks. It was a partially induced coma because I had to wait for the swelling to come down in my brain. So I really don't remember a month. That period from February 5th to March 5th is gone. It's just total black, gone forever. Um, and after coming out of my coma, I was transported to a rehab hospital in Boston, and that's where kind of my journey began. I was initially transported to the third floor, which was reserved for the most critical of cases. So I hardly have any memory of being on the third floor, and that's because they were in the process of taking me off of all the drugs and medication from a partially induced coma. I mean, I still had a long road to go. The most that I could do was sit up in bed, supported by three nurses for only 8 minutes at a time. And after that, I was sweating profusely like I had just ran a marathon. Then really my memories start when I was transported to the second floor. And that's where I kind of began my journey, if you will. So it was then that I started to unknowingly use a system to not only make a full recovery, but run out of the hospital. And that's what I teach to this day with people, one-on-one clients in the STEP video series, STEP the ebook, which is my free ebook that I'll be giving away at the end here. um, but that STEP's an acronym. So it stands for support. So make sure you have the support of your family and friends right from the beginning. This is going to have you falling back on relationships that you built prior to your setback. T is trust. Trust that once you take your first step, your next step is always going to be available to you. And then E is energy. So maintaining your energy allows your body's natural ability to be able to heal itself. Medication has the potential to get in the way of that. And energy continues to evolve and continued to evolve throughout my life, all the way to present day. Finally, P is persistence. So once you take your first step, keep getting up every day and taking your next step, no matter how small. And by moving forward every day, you are building an unstoppable momentum. So, where the whole running out of the hospital came from, I can remember shortly after I was transported to the rehab hospital, I couldn't talk. And I can remember overhearing my parents talking with my team of doctors, therapists, and nurses. And they were saying, okay, what do we need to do to make sure Nick makes a full recovery? I heard in the back of my head, Kobe, that you're going to run out of the hospital. So then I was able to, even though I couldn't talk, I was able to communicate that to the rest of my team, parents, family, everything like that, doctors, and that became our goal that we are working towards every week. So if you fast forward a little bit, less than 60 days later, after being transported to the rehab hospital, I realized my goal of running out of the hospital. And it wasn't like I was done at that point. I mean, if anything, that was the start of the work. I had to continue to go to outpatient therapy for another 6 months, along with being tutored all summer long, 5 days a week, in order to continue on to high school with the rest of my classmates. And this is where real estate comes in. And this is what I'm excited to share. So only 18 months later, after finishing my rehab from my snowboarding accident and being in a coma, I got my start in real estate. And that was door knocking pre-foreclosure doors or homeowners that have received the notice of default letter from the bank. meaning they had missed several payments on their loan and the bank still hadn't foreclosed. So I would go right around the time that I was getting my driver's license. So I was only 15 and 16. I saw my dad, and he had an investment company, real estate investment company. They were playing with the idea of having a bird dog, if you will, go to these homes, knock on the door, and try to set up meetings for one of our investors the following week, or one of his investors the following week. So I was like, this is perfect. I'm just getting my license, so I can do this. So um, I couldn't, for those first 6 months that I had my license when I was 16 and a half, I couldn't legally drive with anyone in my car, but that couldn't stop me from doing like 50 to 70 doors in a day. So that's kind of how it all started for me. Real estate. I got the itch, if you will, and I continued that throughout the rest of high school. After graduate high school, then got my real estate license. Started helping buyers and sellers, sales, like not rentals or anything. So helping buyers and sellers buy and sell homes, and I was a realtor really, I would say I got my license March of 2008. So I know what everyone's thinking out there. What a great time to get your real estate license. So I got it then. I really didn't know any different. That was all these people complaining about, oh, the market's so tough or the market. I didn't know any different. So I was able to get it together, if you will, and still make a living and help buyers and sellers. And then in 2014, at the end of 2014, my dad came to me. He was buying homes creatively again, without using any of his money, or his credit or big investor down payments. And he was starting to acquire all these properties, and he was going to have to hire someone to put them on the market, the rent to own market. And he's like, listen, he came to me, he said, I don't want to have to hire someone to have to do this. If you're right here in house, you think you can do this? So I agree that okay, I can do this right along being a realtor, helping him as an investor. Then over the course, and he was giving me a piece of the deals, like as we filled homes and everything. So over the course of the next 18 months, my income shifted where I was making the majority of my money with him as an investor. So in January of 2016, excuse me, in January of 2016, it didn't make sense for me to keep my real estate license anymore, and I joined him full time. Now, since 2016, I have been helping with the marketing of his properties. Then that turned into, oh, okay, you can help with the buyers, like when they call in off the marketing that you place, and then you can get them in there for viewings, you can meet with them, all that. So that evolved, and over, got it, I call it the next few years, we were able to systemize a process. We call it the buyer process that we'd like to put all of our buyers through to make sure that they're successful and they get to the end of their agreement and they do go forward and get their own loan. And I know industry standards, and you can relate to this, I'm sure, and all your listeners will be able to relate to this. If you hear of a rent to own, or anyone doing a rent to own, oh, that never works. They never go forward and get their own loan. Well, because the all the systems, tools, and processes that we like to put our buyers through and our heavy, very heavy pre-qualifying and vetting and everything at the beginning, we do a lot of work at the beginning. We're seeing probably the inverse relationship where up to 90% of our rent to own buyers are getting to the end of their agreement and they're able to get their own loan. It's starting to occur every month, and it's going to get busier. It's going to be every week, but we're just in the office right now doing a deal out in California that we sold to some rent to own buyers a little over 2 years ago. So, yeah, that in a nutshell. Um, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, Nick, I think you have such an incredible story, man, because a lot of people say when they get started in real estate or entrepreneurship or whatever it is that they're doing, 18, maybe 17 is probably like the youngest, like their story starts, right? But your story started literally 4 years before that. Your story started in eighth grade, at 14 years old. And I just have to ask because, most of the time, if you think about like a 14-year-old kid, they probably don't have I guess, even the mental strength to set a goal for themselves like that after going through such a traumatic experience, either physically or mentally or both. So for you, what was it at the time? Like how were you able to, as a 14-year-old kid, be able to have that type of mentality where you're saying to yourself, I'm going to think of this in a positive direction. I'm not going to let this ruin my life. And instead, I'm going to turn this completely 180 around and make it define me in a positive way.
I would say that's a great question. I don't know as if I've ever been asked it just that way, so I really appreciate the question. I would say big kudos goes out to my parents because they were my support. So um, I think it's so important that, and I talk about it within Step, the ebook, that you line up your support right from the beginning, whatever you're going through. They were my support. They had, I mean, get this. I was I was basically unable to move, just coming out of my coma. They had plastered, my dad plastered all affirmations all over my room. I couldn't get away from it. I couldn't leave. So it was like with each step I take, I'm getting stronger and stronger. And then like I'd look on the wall every day in every way, I'm getting better and better. And like some version of that everywhere all of my room. And I couldn't get away from it. Um, so I think it's the support. That's so important. Um, yeah, that's my answer.
And I think it's a great answer because, that's the number one letter, right, in your step system. And that I think, felt really, really powerful for you, I think, at the time. It's just having that support system. And, hearing your story actually reminds me a little bit about the story that Napoleon Hill talks about in his book, Think and Grow Rich, where, he had a son that was born, I think, without ears, and he was able to, through, similar methods, allow him to hear normally. Right. So I don't know. Is that something that, your parents were drawn upon,
Yeah.
these types of
Yeah.
philosophies?
I mean, maybe because my dad at the time he went from being a builder to a realtor to an investor to he was always in real estate. So at the time he had just sold his brokerage and he was doing motivational speaking and coaching with clients, private clients. So that's where it was always upon me, Kobe. It was never a oh, okay, what do you think? You have a choice here. You're either gonna get up or you're just gonna lay there. It was always, oh, okay, just because they kept that bad stuff shielded from me was okay, this happened, unfortunately. Now we just gotta do this therapy, do this work, and then we can get back home and get back to a normal life. That was always how it was presented to me. So I didn't know any other way. I didn't consider any other way. And I think that was kind of my upbringing. And that's really where the step system comes in is because Step, the ebook, is really it's a system that I unknowingly used. And I said that key phrase at the beginning because it all came after the fact. So I have been doing those events and speaking at our events once or twice a year since I joined full time in 2016. Well, I always thought, I mean, ever since I got out of high school, I've always had this voice in the back of my head that's saying, yeah, great, Nick. But what you really have to be doing is telling your story from stage and helping trauma survivors thrive with the rest of their lives. So that voice has always been there no matter what I'm doing. Then, after hearing me tell my story in 2019, I was approached by a woman named Sharon Spano. Uh, Sh- Sharon shared, she said to me that, complimented me on my story, and then said if I was ever looking to kind of fine tune my message and bring it to another level so I could impact and help the most amount of people, she could introduce me to some coaches and mentors that have helped her along the way. I wasn't ready yet, as I was actually in the final throes of a voice issue that I've been dealing with since 2012. It sounded like it was really hard for me to get the words out. Like I had a lot of tension right here. So I wasn't ready yet. However, I always hung on to her card. And then in May of 2021, after the voice issue had worked its way out of my system, I finally reached out to her. I said, okay, Sharon, I'm ready. What should I do? Who should I talk to? She introduced me to her mentor, Trisha Brook. And ever since I've had that first call with her, there has been no voice in the back of my head. So, I mean, that's evidence to me that I'm doing exactly what I was put on this earth to do. So I shared my story and my goals with Trisha. She recommended that I do the speaker salon that fall for 25,000. And at a soul level, Kobe, I had to do this. And then during the speaker salon, she pitched the idea of what it would look like to work with her one on one. She told me that she actually works with speakers to help them build out their speaker platform. I didn't even know what that was. Um, that was 75,000. So I said, I don't have that in my back pocket. However, I asked her to give me a week and I said, I'll figure it out. And I wired her the money 6 days later. Uh, to me, this wasn't even a decision. I had to do this. So, working with her, I think it was on our first call, she said to me that, okay, you have this amazing story. You were in a snowboarding accident and you ran out of the hospital. How'd you do it? I said, I don't know. I just got up every day and did the best I could. I just kept working. She goes, it was on a video call like this. And she kind of leaned in and goes, no, not good enough. How did you do it? And she kept digging to a point where I may have even ended that first call early, which is absurd because I was paying a ridiculous amount of money for these calls. I only had like 10 calls with her. And I'm so happy that we went through that process because Trisha was the one that pulled the step system out of me. So the step system is just how as I alluded to earlier, how I was raised and how I've dealt with any adversity in my life. So whether it's my snowboarding accident, my voice issue, anything, I've always dealt with it like that with the step system. So after we don't have time to get into the whole voice issue thing, but maybe if you'll have me back in the future, we can we can dive into that. But after I got through that, so that was I developed it in 2012. I got my last Botox injection in 2020, so like 8 years that I had to deal with that. And after I got through that, I was on the other side of that. I remember thinking to myself, all right, I have something here. I have to share this with the world because there are so many people out there that need to hear this. And that's really what the step system is and why I'm sharing it so often now at like brain injury conferences, on brain injury association webinars, and shows like this. So that's where the step system kind of came from. And I thought that was important to give your listeners context. And you.
Yeah, and thank you for that because it's, I love that story where you talked about it because there's a lot of people who I'm sure are going through something, different things that are similar, not necessarily in the sense that, they've gone through, also some type of physical or mental trauma, but maybe they have certain type of success or they've overcome some things in their life or in their business, but they can't necessarily sit down and define it. So the fact that you were able to with the help of your mentors, be able to craft that into a very simple system, actually, that people can understand easily and can take it and apply it in a day-to-day basis, whether if it's overcoming obstacles, big or small. I think that's what's making what you're doing and what you're, speaking about so impactful. And that is kind of what leads me to my next question, which is, for real estate agents out there, you have experience as a real estate agent, probably starting out, like you said, in maybe one of the worst years ever to be in real estate or start out in real estate. So for real estate agents out there who are going through, the daily challenges of being their own business owner, of being in sales, of maybe leading a team of agents, right, where they're scaling up their business a little bit, how would you advise them to utilize the step system to be able to not have racing thoughts when business isn't going well, to be able to remain calm and continue to push through towards their goals, even when things seem dire, even when there's a lot of noise in the industry, and things might seem a little unsure at this time?
I think the number one thing, and I think I find myself advising the investors that we work with and we partner with on deals with, we call them associates that we have all over the country. I find myself saying it every week is that and it's getting to a point where it's almost daily. Just keep going. Just whatever you do, keep going. Because the people who stick around and continue to take that next step, you're going to find the answer. But it's the majority of the people out there that whenever they encounter a roadblock or a challenge or an adversity, they kind of throw their hands up in the air and, oh, I've never dealt with this, and I'm going to go in a different direction. This isn't for me. So I think really it's just stick with it. Just keep going, keep taking that first step. And when it's going through dealing with a challenge or adversity, it's really no different when applying the step system. So I find myself talking about this more and more, Kobe, is that the step system has so many wide ranging applications, but right now I am just focused, and we are just focused on like helping people that are in trauma get through to the other side and thrive with the rest of their lives. However, if you look at the step system, you can apply it to anything. Um, and that's definitely with building a business, starting a business or building a business or continuing to scale and grow a business. How do you think I started this common goal and my speaking and everything? I mean, prior to Trisha, right when this woman saw me speak in 2019, the longest I'd spoken before to anyone was maybe 15 or 20 minutes max. And I was always like I get done and like, whoa, wow, that was really that was really tough and everything. Now I do 45 and 60-minute keynotes for brain injury associations at their conferences. Now the STEP system is developed. We've also developed the STEP video series. All of that wouldn't have been possible. And even during my time working with Trisha, I saw people that came into her sphere, and they were all gung-ho and charged up about it, but then they just faded because they stopped doing the work and they stopped taking that next step. But as long as you keep going, there is no failure doesn't exist. So as long as you keep going and keep taking that next step, um, you'll get to where you're going to go, or where, if I may say, where God's intending you to go, because it might not be where you think, um, where you're supposed to be, where you're supposed to end up. I can get a little
Right.
bit spiritual on that.
Right. And I love that you mentioned that as well, where you said, as long as you keep going, failure doesn't exist. And that's one of the most, I think, well said things about the idea of persistence, which is the P, the last step of the step method, the step system as well. And one of the things I think a lot of people think of when it comes to persistence or just taking that next step day after day after day is they feel like they have to maybe do more day after day, right? They want to improve. And I think we should all, in a sense, be wanting to improve, right? Each day after another, do a little bit more, do a little bit better. But what is your take on this? Do you think that persistence is you got to do more every day or maybe
And
sometimes
you
less? It's
can
okay.
fall into a trap. I've done it. I've fallen into the trap myself where you want to do more and more and more and more and more. And at a certain point, so remember how I said the step system in the E in the step system, energy has continued to evolve. So right after a traumatic event, an accident, any kind of a life crisis, anything, a traumatic event is make sure you don't have your body being pumped with medication and chemicals because that can get in the way of the body's natural ability to be able to heal itself. However, that has continued to evolve. So I mean, right now, what that is I get something called Tui Na. It's basically Chinese body work for those of you who aren't familiar with it. And myofascial release, I get them both treatments once every 5 weeks to help keep my energy strong and be able to impact and affect the most amount of people possible. And right along with that is meditation. So with getting Twina, the my become a friend, but friend, teacher, master, however you can describe him, Dr. Ming Wu. He's I just saw him this past weekend, this past Saturday for a treatment. He was the one that taught me how to meditate. So he taught me how to meditate in 2009. So now I've been meditating since then, and I do probably 3 to 4 times a week. I'll do 30 to 45 minutes. And the reason I bring up meditation is it's so important, especially for you brokers, agents out there who are struggling with the fact that, oh, I just don't know where the next deal is coming from. Thinking of giving up. Start, if I can implore you, start a meditation practice. Um, and listen, get quiet, listen to that voice inside, because that's where the voice inside is where the goal came to run out of the hospital. Where the voice inside was the one who told me I'd be able to get my speaking voice back and be able to talk like I am today on this podcast, listening to that. I wouldn't have been able to listen to that without a stillness practice. So, if I can implore you anything, is to check out a talk that I did. It's on YouTube. You can look it up. It's called "My Introduction to Stillness Was a Coma," and it kind of gives. It's a short talk. It's like 6 minutes long, but it gives an introduction into how I was taught how to meditate and how simple and easy it is. I think meditation, especially nowadays, is built up as this big, scary thing. It's not. You're smiling because you know that's true. It's really not. It's just getting quiet. So check that out. If I can encourage you to do that, check that out. My introduction to stillness was a coma. Look it up. That'll really help you get started with that, with your own meditation practice.
Yeah, and I think it's funny that you mentioned that as well because a lot of people do think, taking out the time to meditate, right? They don't know where to start. They don't know how to do it. They have so many questions, right? What do I
Yeah,
think about? What do I do? And then you put it so simply. It's just being quiet, being still, right? We have to get out of our own heads sometimes. Wouldn't you say so?
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so easy because I started with just 5 or 10 minutes of just focusing on nothing.
It's
And
just
when your mind wanders, just bring it back to nothing. That's it. It's not complicated. That's all you have to worry about. And I built up from there 10, 20 minutes, and now I do 20 minutes and qigong after a few postures and moves of qigong after. So that talk will help them get started, but that's it. That one sentence that I just shared with you, just focus on nothing. That's it.
yeah.
Think of how easy that is.
I can't get simpler than that, right? Focus on nothing. I think a lot of agents who are so busy in their day to day could use a little bit of that as well. And really just to kind of wrap up our conversation today, for agents out there, right? I mean, you've been in the industry, your family's been in the industry as well. You know how it is, the day to day, the hectic schedule, the showings, the canceled showings, and then the rebook showings, and listing appointments that are the same as well. So for agents that are out there who just say that, yeah, I just can't take out the time to focus on my health. I just can't take out the time to slow down and focus on nothing. My mind has to be on something. I have to be making calls or running to this appointment and that appointment. They don't even sit down and eat. They eat in their cars, a granola bar, and that's their lunch. What would you say to them? How important was it for you, or is it for you now, to take the time out of your busy schedule, running multiple businesses, speaking, to make sure you're getting that time in? And how much has that affected you?
I think it's especially the case, Kobe, if you can't find the time. You don't know where you're gonna do it. It doesn't, meditation's not for me. If you're saying that, you need to start. You need to start like yesterday. Because I think by cultivating, so that's what I talk about in that talk. My introduction to stillness was a coma. By cultivating that stillness, you're actually building a resilience. It's a resilience that you're building, like a reservoir that you can draw on when times get tough. And obviously they will get tough. We all go through crap. Pardon my language there, but we all go through crap, and it just it sets you up in such a better position to handle that when it does. Um, so I would say just start. That's the number one thing. It's simple. Just start.
Yep, absolutely. Nick, thank you so much for taking some time today and sharing your story and really bringing, I think, a lot of value for busy agents that are out there, agents who are struggling, who do have a lot of racing thoughts from day to day, who don't know if their business is going to turn out the way that they want to, right? You have a lot of practical tips for agents today. So for anybody who's out there who's watching this or listening to this, what are some of the best ways for people to continue following you? How can they get a copy of your ebook, and what are some of the best places for people to continue, following along your journey as well?
Sure, yeah, thank you for that. The best place to download Step is what we went over is really just a 10,000 foot view of the Step system, but to download the entire Step system, go to my website, nickprefontaine.com/step, and there you're going to learn all about support, trust, energy, and persistence. You will also find at the bottom of that, or actually, I don't know exactly where it is on the website, but I am on LinkedIn and Facebook. So if you click on that, you'll be able to find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. Now, what I went over also with how we buy and sell homes creatively. That's what we're doing. I know I only touched on it like minor, maybe a sentence. But if that appeals to you, you can check out our website and get registered for a free master's class for that to learn all about how we buy and sell on terms, is what we like to call it, at smartrealestatecoach.com/master's class. And if by the end of the master's class, I think it's only 20 or 30 minutes, you want, like, you're interested and you want to learn more, you'll be able to take your first step.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nick. We'll make sure to share the links to that in the description and the show notes down below. But other than that, man, I appreciate you being on the show. Before we wrap up today's episode, I just wanted to ask if you have any last pieces of advice or nuggets you want to leave as we kind of finish up today's conversation.
Yeah, I would say whatever you're dealing with, because we're all dealing with something. Let's be serious. Whatever it is, whether it's business, personal, health, um, my feeling is you have some inkling, oh, you have some idea in your head about what you can do right now, today, to improve that, to make that better in any small way. My advice is to just take your first step towards that, because once you take that first step, your next step's always going to be available to you.
Absolutely. Nick, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you on the next show. Take care.